let me tell you a little bit about our guest. The guests are two different people. One's name is Becky, one's name is Nick. They both work for Denver Botanic Gardens, which has been a long cultural community partner of ours. The Gardens strives to entertain and delight people while spreading the collective wisdom of nature and the gardens itself through a couple different programs related to outreach, collaboration, and education. And their conservation programs play a really serious and major role in saving species and protecting natural habitats for us to enjoy and for future generations of humans to enjoy. And they're in the city, they're in the heart of downtown. And of course, nature is all around downtown as well, but kind of a neat thing to be in Denver with the Botanic Gardens right there. And then the mountains for me right there. And nature is integral in my life and in all of ours in a lot of ways. Let me tell you a little bit about the two speakers. Dr. Becky Hufft is the Associate Director of Applied Conservation at the Denver Botanic Gardens. And she's overseen plant conservation projects there since 2011. Nick Elias, not a doctor, according to the graphic, but still a talented human being, is their senior graphic designer and an incredible artist, designed the illustration you see right here. And what we're excited to hear from the two of them is how an artist and a scientist come together to make magic and share the important message of the Denver Botanic Gardens. With that said, I want to welcome to the stage Becky Hufft and Nick Elias. Welcome, good morning, thanks for being here. Say hello, and it's all you guys.
Awesome, thanks Dave. I'm gonna now to take over the screen. So everything that looks good is because Nick made it, and then any technical difficulties is because I'm sharing the PowerPoint. So just to diversify our skill sets. All right. Maybe everybody's seeing the screen again from my end. Okay, awesome. Nick, do you want to tell us who you are, how you got here?
Certainly. Well, thanks for having me, everyone. It's great to be with you on this snowy morning. My name is Nick Elias, and I'm the senior graphic designer here at Denver Botanic Gardens, or there, I'm at home. I originally come from Billings, Montana, the big city of Montana. Some of my earliest memories, I would say, involved, playing outside in nature, exploring the fields around our apartment buildings. I was an apartment dweller for most of my childhood, so I always loved whenever I got the chance to just get out and explore nature, and then go home and sketch. And I've been drawing since I was a little kid. I went to Montana State University and got my degree in graphic design in Bozeman, Montana, and then traveled down to Denver, where I first started working at American Humane Association, whose mission was protecting kids and animals. And that was kind of my first professional introduction into biophilia and our role with protecting animals. And I worked there for 4 years, and then we made it over to the Botanic Gardens, where I've been for the past 7 years. And my role is a lot of our public-facing designs. There's a few designers here at the Gardens, and so that's my primary role. And I love it, and I love getting people into the gardens and enjoying our beautiful horticultural work.
Thanks, Nick. So I'm Becky Hufft. I am the Associate Director of Applied Conservation here at the Gardens. I am, for once, actually at the Gardens, not often here these days. I mostly grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and I lived in the city, but a smaller city than Denver, but still very urban. But my family was very into camping and hiking, and that's really how we spent every vacation and every opportunity. So that's probably where this all started for me. But as opposed to Nick, who went home and would draw after those such outings, I think I've always been the kid who, was doing a science fair project and just kind of knew that was my path from a young age. I went and got a degree in biology for college in Chicago, and then got a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology at UC Santa Cruz. I then landed in Colorado in 2006 and had some jobs in Fort Collins and Boulder, but then landed at the Gardens 9 years ago. And it's been really great. And as I'll share kind of throughout this talk today, I definitely think there's been evolution in my thinking and in my way of thinking about what it is that I do and what's the best way to share with the world the work that we do. It's been really fun to be at the Gardens and to get exposed to a lot of different fields and thinking about how we can all work together to serve the same mission. So with that being said, I wanted to start with just there's a few different definitions of biophilia. And so it really started with this idea of a love of life as opposed to necrophilia, the love of death, right? So this idea of inherently like love being alive, but that was also extended to this idea of kind of loving the processes and being attracted to the processes of life and growth. And it was really in the 80s that an ecologist or a biologist, E.O. Wilson, kind of brought this idea into the biological sciences. And the idea really being this theory that people are kind of genetically predetermined to have this affinity to nature and to love other forms of life. And I think that's what we're hoping to kind of explore today. But I do think that that's also kind of at the foundation of why we do what we do. And so, I don't know, Nick, if you want to share anything else about your ideas on biophilia.
Yeah, so I recently listened to a podcast with E.O. Wilson, Dr. Wilson, and I just found it interesting that he mentioned this sort of affinity for nature where life can be either positive or negative. And so it kind of also encompasses like our fascination with like the creepy and the crawly, our phobias of like arachnophobia. I think it plays into a lot of like what people find so fascinating about life that's so different than human life. And so I just found that to be a pretty interesting point that he brought up, that it's not just all the love for your pets and plants, but it's also the sort of caution and natural fear of certain species. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's been even just thinking about this presentation, it's had me thinking a lot about, so I'm going to try to actually advance the slide. There we go. About just the great opportunity that we have to kind of explore in our positions that the Gardens allows us to explore these ideas. And I thought we could just start out, because not everyone really knows what we do here at the Gardens. And I think people know that the Gardens have really beautiful gardens, right, that you can come and explore and be in and experience. But they might not know the fact that we have these two different departments of thinking about the graphic design and science. So we thought we'd start with just kind of giving a high level view of how we think the Gardens encompasses this idea of biophilia, but then get into kind of where Nick and I then get to explore and play with that in our jobs.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think the Gardens mission is it's connecting people with plants, especially plants in the Rocky Mountain region and other regions like it across the world. So that's a lot of where Becky and my work come in from, totally different angles on the art side and the science side. Just a little bit about the Gardens. We have 4 core values, and we thought we'd just take a peek at some programs that utilize and try to advance these core values in our work. So I'll start with relevance. And the Gardens is always trying to be relevant in the Denver community, as well as the scientific and cultural communities. We always want to remain being a science thought leader and expert in the fields of conservation, gardening, obviously, as well as the farm and agricultural industry. And we're a member of the SCFD, the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District. And so we know the importance of cultural institutions such as the gardens to help people connect with their community and the world around them. So we take this work seriously, and yeah, I guess next I would jump to diversity and talk about so much of the garden's work is trying to promote diversity and make the gardens as accessible and inclusive to as many people and communities as possible. So I'd mention the free shuttle program that we have at the gardens as one of those ways that we do that. It's a great program where we work with communities that might not normally get to make it to the gardens or experience the gardens. And so it's a free shuttle to and from the gardens, along with free admission for the groups, as well as sometimes free programming and free tours with our docents. And then along with that, we've had an initiative for the last few years of really trying to make the gardens more accessible to our Spanish speaking audiences. And so we have translated pretty much everything on site as far as interpretation, talking about the plants and the ecosystems that people are looking at. So as well as just all of our information and wayfinding signage. So that's been a big project over the past few years that I've had the chance to work on. And then I'll toss it to Becky for the next two.
Yeah, I just want to add too, I think this idea of diversity is also paralleled in our conservation and ecology work too, right? In ecology, there are these kind of fundamental principles that we have found that the more diverse the system is, right, the more resilient and more resistant to change it is. And I do think that we can kind of envision a world, right, where our workplaces and our communities are diverse in the same way, that allow us to be more creative and have more diverse solutions in the same way that we find that in nature as well.
Yeah.
Did I go too far? I don't know. I want to say here that so this is a picture of our new Freyer Newman Center that just opened, and this is our Center for Science, Art, and Education. And so I don't know if you can tell by the title of that, being that science and art are the two lead words there, that I do think the Gardens does a great job of trying to combine these two fields that are most often siloed in institutions, right? And so physically in the space, we share offices together, and in the same building, we have gallery space and we have research labs, right? And we have the opportunity to actually collaborate and work together. So this is a new space for us, but I'm really excited about what the future holds. And just as another example of how I think we seamlessly do that, Nick and I didn't even really plan this, but I just like to point out that we both wore the same shirt today, because that's how seamless we are in working together. Nice job, Nick. Okay, so I do think, as you'll see kind of in some of our examples today of kind of what we're doing to kind of combine science and art, and how Nick and I get to kind of play with that. This new building, I think, does allow us kind of a physical space to do that, as well as just kind of in a virtual world or in kind of a project space. I think I probably removed some of that. I just want to go here too. This idea of sustainability. This is what our green roof, one of our green roofs here at the garden. And so this is just an idea. And I know that there was even, some legislation passed last year in Denver to promote the installation of green roofs on city buildings, in addition to kind of solar panels and things like that. And this is just a great opportunity to think about not only how we change our kind of asphalt and steel and cement structures in the city to actually offer some more life. And but it, thinking about things like air filtration and providing opportunities for pollinators to have other spots to go to, but also just that we know that people are healthier, right, when they're around plants and when they're around, gardens. And so the more spaces that we have in the city where people can just experience plants and animals and nature psychologically, like we're healthier. But there's even a recent study that came out of Finland that shows that our microbes are actually changed too, right? When we plant native gardens, we plant these landscapes in our urban areas, it actually changes your good microbes too. And I just think that there's all sorts of benefits, right, to kind of changing our landscape in this way and being creative and how we use architecture and how we use landscape design to both fields that are not my area of expertise, but to just enhance our landscape around us.
Sure.
So this, I think, and I'll give it over to you, Nick. All of our work here at the Gardens really is about, as Nick mentioned, connecting people with plants. And this is just one way that we think about it, where we kind of want to engage the visitor where they are when they come, right? And people are going to be coming for different reasons. Some are coming to just appreciate the art. Some are coming just to see the pretty plants, right? But we want to kind of engage them and move them along this pathway in different ways. And Nick, I don't know if you want to chat more about these or just how we interact with them in our jobs every day.
Yeah, I think just having this framework is a great tool for all of our departments. It was actually developed by our learning engagement and exhibition department, who work with a lot of our visitors and do a lot of surveys. So it's kind of learning what engages people to get them interested, and then what sustains that interest to better to learn more, to understand more about the environment, and hopefully transform their behavior to make them better stewards of the environment and protectors of the planet. And I think we plug in all along this spectrum, whether it's externally facing or it's something on site that is engaging them along, the middle of this path. And then all of our work that goes external again to promote good stewardship of the environment. So we really, both Becky and I, plug into this process all along the way. So it's it's a great tool and a great visual, I think, of just how we do that and where we're taking people. So.
And this also makes me think about the fact that regardless of how we use our skills here at the Garden or the different various projects that we work on, trying to make sure that everything we do is engaging somewhere along this path, right? That our purpose really should be, moving people along this path and, having them have a deeper understanding and experience and appreciation when they come here and what they take away and how they engage in their communities. And that makes me think about how, in general, love of nature, I think doesn't, like we work at the Gardens, I think we are here also just because of our love of nature, right? And that, and we're able to use different skill sets we have to apply to that love. And in thinking about this conversation we're having today, Nick and I have been chatting a lot about just how creativity plays into the work that we do on the science team and how we get our results and messages out, and then also how science might influence art. And it made me think of a conversation when I first started here. This is going to be my vulnerable moment to share that I've changed and I've evolved. But when I first started here at the Gardens, I was having a conversation in our coffee shop with the director of research, Jenny Neal, who's on this call, as well as our director of exhibits, Elisa Eldred. And Elisa was asking, we're trying to find out different ways I think we could all work together, was I think the intent of the meeting, a good aim. And there was a question to me and maybe Jenny about just like what role creativity plays in the science work that we do. I don't remember exact wording because it's been, almost a decade now that we've had this conversation, but I remember the feeling I had. I remember this like visceral like response of being kind of like offended at this idea that like the science I did, this like, this very empirical work that we do, that there would somehow be like this creative, like this idea that like that's like being creativity in that. And it's like, no, those are just like facts I'm gathering and I'm presenting them. I'm not sure why I had that reaction, but that was my, at least internal. I don't know how I responded externally, but like internally, that's how I felt. And I find it very interesting that I think now, almost a decade later, if I were to have the same conversation, I would instantly jump to 1,000 different ways that we use creativity to problem solve and think about different ways to design experiments. But I think most importantly, creativity and thinking about how we communicate the science that we do to the world and how we get messaging out. And the fact that I do think for a long time, and this may be a generational thing, that as scientists, we were trained that like the facts matter. I still think that's true, but that's all that mattered. And I do think that I've changed a bit in thinking that it also has to make people feel, right? And so you can't just provide facts, but you also have to provide them in a way that changes their experiences and changes how they perceive the world. And only if they kind of have a feeling, right, that goes along with that, might they enact change, right? Might they change their behavior? So now I really do view our work through the lens of, I might not always have the skill set to put things out into the world in a way that's that communicates that effectively to other people, but I know a lot of people that can do that, right? And so trying to work with my colleagues to figure out what's the best way to get ideas out. And to me, that's a big piece where I think right now we combine our science and art and creativity, is trying to just bring different people together. It doesn't always have to be on one person, right? We can all work together and bring our skill set. And so I think to me, that's been the biggest transformation of just my own personal feelings and career, but through this work at the Gardens, where we've been able to work so closely together and kind of evolve these different projects. I don't know how you feel, Nick, whether prior to coming to the Gardens or since you've been here, kind of this melding of science and art and how that's impacted you personally or in your career.
Yeah, I was going to say, just speaking to sort of scientists and our horticulturists and their ability to communicate the complex work that they work on. I think it's been great that some of our scientists and horticulturists have taken actual like storytelling classes or writing courses, and it just helps better communicate all the great work that they do, and helps us work with them to try and get to the core of what we're trying to get across, so people understand the importance of the work in, protecting our natural resources. And so I think every job has creativity. So it's just funny to me that you would, first of all, be kind of offended that creativity is like a bad thing.
I'm ashamed. I don't know why. Yeah.
But then sort of on the flip side, the Gardens has the School of Botanical Art and Illustration. And so that's one of the slides that you're looking at. And I started taking classes after a couple of years of working at the Gardens, because I'd taken plenty of drawing classes, but I have not really, taken quite such regimented and detailed types of classes. It's a lot more like, gestural drawings and figure drawings. And so I was really interested in joining. And then I had a similar incident, but from the opposite end, I would say. I had the opportunity to join this sketchbook, a traveling sketchbook that the School of Botanical Art and Illustration puts out. I'll just kind of show a few pages. But I got the chance to join that. And so I was working on my my drawing for the sketchbook. So it was actually a physical sketchbook that we'd pass around from artist to artist. And I was working on mine, and Murphy, who was the manager of the school at the time, stopped by and was basically like, I didn't know you could draw. And so she's like a huge botanical illustrator and biology. She's really knowledgeable on botany and the anatomy of the plants and all that. She's a scientist herself. And so it was just funny to me that she hadn't really seen that side of my work or my art, I guess. A lot of my designs are more sort of, vector or like digital art and digital illustration. And so it was a chance to kind of show that I can draw too with the best of them, hopefully. But so I joined the school, and now I'm working my way to get a certificate in botanical illustration, and I'm really enjoying my work. And I think I think conveying scientific processes and also plants and anatomy is so important for the scientists, as well as just everyone who's interested in the plants that they see around them, as well as plants they might not normally see around them. And so botanical illustration is really great about, you can show so much more of a plant than what you might be able to get from a photo. You can show all the stages of the plant's life. You can show all the parts of the plant, from the roots up through the petals or the leaves. And so it's such an important tool for showing and depicting really specific and intentional aspects of the plants that you want to convey. And so I think the program here is really great, and I've been having a lot of fun working on it.
And I'll just share that I didn't realize you were going to give the anecdote about Murphy. So it's lovely that I have this as my next image, because this is actually by Murphy, who is our former director of botanical illustration and who has retired recently. And I also have Lilac behind me in my office wall, and I have one at home in my living room. So this is pollen. So this is all just another, I think, example though of how I do think that art can not only show us details that are harder to actually convey through photographs. Like if this was a photograph in a textbook or something, I actually think it's harder for our brains to see and interpret these different structures. And even just the previous image of these different plant parts, to your point, Nick, that I agree again, that these drawings and the artist renderings and their version of what this plant looks like, I do think allows people to identify and train and understand these plants very differently than just photographs do. Not that photographs aren't also important, but and so this drawing is, and it does take a lot of both knowledge of the anatomy and plants as well as artistic ability. Oh yeah, we threw this one in. This is actually, Nick, do you want to describe what this is?
Oh, that's just from one of the classes I was taking. So it's, showing the different levels of drawing the plant from the structure up through the sketching. And then you would take this and go to a final drawing eventually. So just a quick GIF I made on my GIF on my phone. So
and this is our corpse flower, one of our corpse flowers here at the gardens. And another example of how we use art to get the public to engage. Nick, for each of the different times our corpse flower has bloomed, has created like a limited edition t-shirt, one of which I think we're both wearing, right? Of like an interpretation of that corpse flower. And it is another good way, right, to engage people, to get them to come see the big things, right? It's like the panda of the plant world, right? It's like large and kind of charismatic. I mean, it's stinky, but and depending on your affinity, your love of life, right? And so I think using these opportunities, though, both through art as well as interpretation that describes kind of the biology and where this plant comes from, helps bring people in, but also educate people about what we do here. And this is another example of how I think art can display messages really quickly. Like, you don't even have to be able to read anything that's on this image, right? But like, you can quickly look at this and be like, oh, beavers and plant interact, right? Even if you take nothing else from this image and maybe otherwise have to learn about this cottonwood and this beaver, right? At least it conveys a feeling, right? And it conveys a message much faster than like sitting and reading the text that goes along with it.
Yeah, and I think it can apply to so many species and plants, whether it's an animal like a beaver, or it's, a pollinator and showing you, this bumblebee likes this type of flower, and this fly likes this type of flower, such as the corpse flower, which is why it produces that stinky smell, is to attract flies to help it reproduce. And so, yeah, I think you can convey that in such a quick, identifiable way through botanical illustration, just like that beaver drawing, that I think it breaks it down real quick. Like, there's a beaver, there's a tree, he's gnawing on it, he must like that tree. So
yeah, I think on the opposite end, so those are examples, kind of think of an artist rendering of the world. And I just have a couple examples of work that like is actually just a product of the actual work that we do, that that we're collecting data on and that we're using for teaching, but that we then end up, if you can see, I also have a giant poster in my office behind me in this picture as well. So this is actually a slide that I made that I was using for a kind of educational event. And the little, it's hard to see on this slide. Anyway, they're part of a leaf structure, these stomates. And but because of the coloring and the way that it looks, it ends up being like, these kind of really pretty pieces of art that also kind of convey something about biology. And likewise, even kind of having these other microscope images of fungal spores, right? You don't even have to really necessarily know what those are, but they're, because of the way they get stained and they show up through on the slide into the microscope, they're just pretty, right? They're also just beautiful images. And it's, I think, thinking about scale, right? And blowing these are both from microscopes, right? Microscope slides, blowing them up really large, right? And seeing and appreciating the beauty in these images as well.
And very festive, like RJ said.
That's right. And they're red and green if you celebrate that holiday. Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about the science pyramid. So back in 2014, I feel like that's a good year that this was built. We built the science pyramid at the gardens. And this was really the first time that we had kind of this kind of big public piece where we kind of conveyed the science that we do at the gardens. Prior to the new building that we just opened this year, the research staff was down in the basement of our main building, and most visitors that came to the garden didn't necessarily know that we had a science department or what we did. And so the science pyramid was really a way to have visitors to the gardens at least be introduced to the work we do. And I don't know if you want to speak, Nick, to kind of the different way that kind of art and design went into this space as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I hope you all can come visit our science pyramid soon. It's obviously closed, as are most of our buildings. So it's kind of sad. It opened literally in, I think, November or something. And so immediately closed. But this was a really great project that I was really proud and happy to work on. And the whole project is an exhibit that's promoting basically biophilia and One Health, so human, animal, and environmental health, and how we are part of our environment, and you are home, so welcome home. There's these giant illustration panels that I got to work on, as well as some displays throughout and interactive elements that you can touch one day and interact with, and then some like trash globes that show you, how much garbage ends up in the ocean. And they're actually really pretty. They're just, you know, these crystal balls of trash that are actually pretty nice to look at. But I had a lot of fun working on this project, and I'm excited for when people can come and interact with it again to learn more about their environment and how they can protect their home, basically.
I don't know if you want to speak to, we've been talking kind of a lot about the smaller things like these drawings and poster size things, but the gardens also has large art installations that we have throughout the gardens, both permanent structures as well as kind of temporary exhibits each year. And to me, these art are, again, another really way to interpret the environment, right? They're a way that you can see through the artist's eye how they're seeing the world, and that kind of can force you to see the world a little bit different way. I don't know, Nick, if you want to chat kind of your view of kind of these large art installations.
Yeah, I think artists interpret the world for us to better take in, and so working with so many artists, either local or national or international, I think, you know, it brings more people into the gardens where they can appreciate the art inside the natural environment, and then hopefully that, you know, helps engage them and get them to learn more about the plants that they're seeing around them, as they're taking in the physical art exhibits. Since the gardens is a living museum, all of our collections are, you know, exhibits of their own right. And so it's nice to, obviously people are going to want to come check out the Chihuly that was here a few years ago, and then spend their time walking the grounds and learning more about all of our other plants and programs while they're here. So it's a great addition to the gardens.
I just wanted to add, there's a couple of ways too where I think science and art can link together. This particular leaf sculpture that's outside of our new building. So if you zoom in, like right on the of the image, you can see kind of some outlines of plants on there, and then there's some numbers underneath them. But what those actually are outlines of actual natural history collections that we have here at the gardens. We have museum collections of plants at the gardens, and images, you know, were taken of those specimens, and then the artist used those to make the outlines for these. And then under each of them actually gives the specimen number of what plant was used to make those. So these actually link to actual specimens in our collections. And so again, I think this is a really cool way, kind of science and art melded together. This is a large willow installation at our Chatfield site down in Littleton, our Chatfield Farms site. And I don't know if you can see a person over on the bottom left here in the blue jacket, just to kind of get a sense of scale of the size of this, so you can walk through it. So to me, I mean, it's a beautiful piece of artwork, but I also think it engaged people in the help of building it, right? A lot of volunteers were actually engaged to help to build this structure, which is another way to engage people. Nick did, excellent. But for me personally, so we have a creek restoration project that we have been doing for the past 5 years at Chatfield. And this is right next to one of our restoration sites. And willows are one of the main plants, right, that are involved in that restoration project. And, you know, and the artist was coming from their own perspective to build this, but the fact that just like in that space, right, we're using the plants that we use for our restoration that are such an integral part of the ecosystem there. And we're doing it right next to this restoration project that we've put a lot of heart and soul into as well to help restore the environment. Just the linkage between those two, to me, means a lot. And again, I don't actually know that necessarily everyone that visits knows all of those linkages, but some do, right? It depends on kind of how far you walk around the site and how you get it. But I also, again, think that you at least start to learn like about this plant and what even the biology of the plant that lets you do this, right? And that lets you you know, cut it down and it resprouts, right? And so again, to me, this is a different way to kind of combine the kind of love of nature and natural artistic aesthetic of this piece with kind of the science that we do.
Yeah, and I think just having this piece that you can walk through and examine on its own is, engaging and inspiring, and you get to learn about this, or you get to see this plant, these willows that can bend and be shaped, and then separately, if you want, you can learn more. There's interpretation nearby that talks about it. So I think pieces like this really fit into the natural environment so well, and invite people to explore it, like you said.
So I think I was mentioning earlier how I don't always think, at least me, but maybe my other colleagues on the science side necessarily always do the best job of conveying our story and in the right way to engage people. And this is an example that I just love, that one of my colleagues is a mycologist that studies fungi, and they have a whole project called the Mycoflora Project, where they get people, citizen scientists, to collect data, right? So they get the public to collect data on mushrooms for this project. And our mycologist, along with our database manager, who has to organize and manage all of our data and make sure that it's quality data, worked with Nick to kind of come up with this idea of how to kind of encourage people to collect data, but not only just collect data, but collect good data, right? And quality data that we can actually use. And I don't know if Nick, if you want to share about kind of I don't even know what information they gave you that you ended up then with this product, but it's adorable. And I think we should have stuffies that we all have.
This one was a lot of fun to work on, and working with Andy was a lot of fun. I would say that when I was drawing it, originally his little cape, I drew with a lot of holes in it, sort of like the lace frill that is around some mushrooms. And basically I had to 86 that because it was the wrong type of mushroom to have it on. And so that was a fun learning experience for me. And then just Andy and Vera, I think, who also has worked at the gardens with our fungi collections for years. Their cute interaction together and calling each other mushroom mates, that is amazing.
And I think that also then speaks to the fact that, right, most of us do what we do because we love what we do, right? We picked this field because we just love it, right? And so the fact that that he critiqued your cape so that you would be scientifically correct in the description, for the mushroom superheroes cape. And then on the left are just some stickers that you created to hand out to people, because it turns out also people really like stickers. And so apparently that's a way to convince people to do things, is to offer them a sticker once they've done it well. So That was good. And here's just some other examples. We put out every year kind of a year in review of the science work that we do here in the gardens. And I think this is another example of how we have a lot of data and we have a lot of information to share. But it's really, Nick, you and your colleagues, right, thinking about the design and how to put that together and convey it in a way that's visually appealing, and that I think in most cases reduces the amount of text that we write by 90%, right? I think we write this much, and then they're like, no, this is the story that people are going to read, right? And so I think a lot of it is that too, right? That crafting what the right story is to share with people. And so this is kind of just an example of some of a little bit different, right? And it's not quite the fun mushroom superhero images, but it still is important to convey all the different work we do. Do you have any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think working with the research department on your annual report every year it's always enlightening for me, and I like to think it is for the public, as well as other scientific organizations that look at your annual report. And it's great to convey all the work you're doing and help people understand what they're looking at when you guys put out your stories. And so it's been great having you guys take on more of a storytelling role. And the same is true for our quarterly magazine that goes out to our members, which I design every quarter. It gives all of our staff a chance to tell their story and what they're working on. We're all our own writers, and we have a fantastic chief editor, Tiffany, who takes the lead on that. And so, yeah, I think working on telling stories of our horticulturists or collaborations like this mythology liquor that they created using plants from the gardens. It's been a lot of fun to help tell those stories. And the same for the summer concerts and all of our public events. You know, it's another way to engage people and get them to come enjoy the natural beauty, and then, you know, hopefully move them along that spectrum to get them more engaged, learn more, hopefully transform and become better stewards. So it's a lot of fun to work on all these projects.
I'm going to stop screen sharing in a second so we can finish out the rest of our conversation, but I just wanted to at least end on a pretty flower. I do want to at least acknowledge that the fact that we get to explore and explore the creative world and explore the science world really does come back to the fact that, right, we have these beautiful gardens that people want to come and visit, right? And so we have our whole horticultural department that makes this possible. And then I do feel like Nick and I then get to take advantage of working here and figuring out different ways that we can share our messaging and share what we think is important all on this backdrop. And so one of the things I think, I'm just gonna stop sharing, Nick, but that's really important is that, especially, I've been thinking about this a lot, right? In the past, 8 months or so that we've been in this pandemic, is how nature soothes us, right? That nature is, I do think that, at least for me, right, there is this love of nature, and being in nature makes us feel better and more peaceful. And I do find, right, that I try to get outside every day, and I try to get my kids outside every day, and I try, you know, and I'm planting a garden, right? How many people ended up planting gardens this year, whether it was in your container on your apartment window, or, you know, your yard, or you were out hiking, right? That's, I think, how a lot of us ended up dealing with the stress of the uncertainty and chaos in the world right now. And there's also social unrest as well, right? And there's a lot of inequity in the world. And thinking about, if we all have a love of nature, and nature is soothing and healing for all of us, then I also think it's important for us to then think about, what does that mean if we can't all access it in the same way, right? What if there's inequity in the way that we can perceive the world and engage with it? And so I do think that it's up to each of us to think about that. And we do live in this urban landscape. And, you know, Dave, even when you introduced us, thinking about the fact that the gardens is right in the heart of the city and provides this, you know, many acres of loveliness and peace and respite in the middle of the city. But it also means, like, doing your part to plant plants in your own yard, right? And we know that helps not only the wildlife that moves through the city. There's a lot of wildlife that moves through the city, but it also helps us, right? It helps us as we think about clean air, and we think about just wanting to be able to take a walk in our neighborhood. And so I don't know, Nick, you want to share on that point, and then I want to just share some initiatives in the city about where we go, how do we get there, right? How do we all play a part in getting there?
Yeah, and I think that's all great information. I think just helping people gain access or time or safety to some of these green spaces like the gardens, you know, there's so many ways that we can do that through, like I said, our own initiatives and programs, as well as, you know, just sharing in the community. We do so much on our own social media, and hopefully people can access that. We've been doing Therapeutic Thursdays, and there's actually one left this year, next Thursday. And so if you can't get out and get it to the gardens or anything, there's opportunities to still connect and take stock of the nature around you, hopefully.
Yeah, I want to, and thinking about as like a community as a whole, right? Denver has signed on to this initiative to try to have, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but basically to try to have all of the citizens of Denver have access, an easy access to being able to walk, within a 10-minute walk to a natural, a trail or a park, and having green space available. And so when we think about different tax initiatives or different things that our Parks and Rec is doing to try to create those, like keep that in mind, right? That it's about all of us, and it's about that we know that there has been kind of consequences to systemic racism in urban environments that has often led, right, to different communities having different access to green spaces. And so trying to really put our resources into lessening that gap and lessening that division among those communities, I think is important. There's also initiatives where you can get your yard certified, whether it's your container garden on your apartment building or your backyard or your front yard through the National Wildlife Federation. So you can, go online and get your yard certified as a wildlife habitat. I think just get out and enjoy. I think not only enjoy for yourself and find peace in nature, but also try to do what you can to create that for other people.
Let's give our guests a massive round of applause for their wisdom and generosity